My name is Zach Arnold. I'm a Hollywood film and television editor, a documentary director, father of two, an American Ninja Warrior in training, and the creator of Optimize Yourself. For over 10 years now, I have obsessively searched for every possible way to optimize my own creative and athletic performance, and now I'm here to shorten your learning curve. Whether you're a creative professional who edits, writes, or directs, you're an entrepreneur, or even if you're a weekend warrior, I strongly believe that you can be successful without sacrificing your health or your sanity in the process. You ready? Let's design the optimized version of you. Hello and welcome to the Optimize Yourself podcast. If you're a brand new optimizer, I welcome you and I sincerely hope that you enjoy today's conversation. If you are inspired to take action after listening today, why not tell a friend about this show and help spread the love? And if you're a longtime listener and Optimizer OG, welcome back. Whether you're brand new or you're a seasoned vet, if you have just 10 seconds today, it would mean the world to me if you clicked the subscribe button in your podcast app of choice. Because the more people that subscribe, the more that iTunes and the other platforms can recognize this show, and thus the more people that you and I can inspire to step outside their comfort zones to reach their greatest potential. If you've listened to at least an episode or two in the past, then it's probably no surprise that I pride myself in being a time management ninja. I always say that the great equalizer is we all have the same 24 hours in a day. But as technology advances and the pace of life gets faster, the expectations of what we can accomplish just grows larger. And now with many of us working from home, we are expected to wear the hat of not one, but multiple roles, which if you're in my industry could mean you're an assistant editor, you're the IT person, you're a production assistant on top of everybody else's overloaded duties, and you just happen to be homeschooling your kids and cooking meals, and it is just no wonder that we are exhausted all the flippin' time. Well, today's guest has mastered the art of wearing multiple hats in the entertainment industry. Emmy Award-winning editor David Rogers has successfully made the transition from editor to director to producer, all while working on some of the most iconic comedies of our time. His first editing credit came from the famous clip show on Seinfeld, where he was both an assistant editor and the editor. He then went on to edit The Office, which is where he eventually began directing and producing. He has also worked on shows such as Newsradio, HBO's The Comeback and Entourage, The Mindy Project, and his latest project that just concluded was Netflix's Space Force. In our conversation, which as a quick disclaimer was originally from a few years back in the Fitness and Post days when David was still on the Mindy Project, David and I break down his path to success, which just as a quick disclaimer started with his main job duty being the guy who picked up the cigarette butts. And from there, we dive into what it takes to build and sustain a career like the one he has built. You're going to find his passion and his energy contagious, and hopefully you're going to come away with at least a few, if not many tips on how you can pursue your dreams and manage your time like a ninja while doing so. Not to mention learning how to build the right relationships to make the next major step in your career. If you are inspired by today's interview and you would like to up your networking game so you can get the attention of the right people who can help open the right doors that lead you to a more fulfilling and rewarding career path, but your outreach email game is a bit weak, well, then I invite you to download my Insider's Guide to Writing Great Outreach Emails. In this extensive and free, by the way, guide, I'm going to teach you why cold outreach is the most important soft skill that you must develop if you want to advance your career, which is important now more than ever that we are all stuck at home and cannot network in person. I will also show you the 5 most common mistakes that people make when writing their outreach messages, and I will bet that you've made at least one of these yourself in the past. And then finally, I'm going to break down step by step in a simple to follow checklist how you can structure an amazing outreach message that is going to provide value to your recipient, help you build a lasting relationship instead of feeling like, you're just bothering this person, and actually get a response to your outreach so you can then seek advice, connect with a potential mentor, set up lunch meetings, and possibly even land your next gig. If you would like to download this brand new guide for free, just visit optimizeyourself.me/email guide. And that's all one word, no dashes, /email guide. All right, without further ado, my conversation with editor, director, and producer David Rogers. Made possible today by our amazing sponsors, Evercast and ErgoDriven, who are both going to be featured just a bit later in today's interview. To access the show notes for this and all previous episodes, as well as to subscribe so you don't miss the next inspirational interview, please visit optimizeyourself.me/podcast. I'm here today with David Rogers, and David Rogers is responsible for one of the defining moments of my later adolescence, which is the Seinfeld clip show. So you're on the show for 100 different reasons, but I just wanted to bring that up because that is like one of the quintessential moments that I remember is sitting and watching that and like being in tears and thinking, oh, Seinfeld is over, Green Day. And so anyway, it's so cool to have you on the show. So I appreciate you being here.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's great to be here. And thank you for appreciating the Seinfeld clip show. That was the first show that I ever got to edit on television.
Well, I want to talk a lot about your background and kind of how you got where you are, because your career trajectory is not terribly unusual, but it's somewhat unusual and fairly rare. And you've worked on shows, aside from Seinfeld, you've worked on shows like Andy Richter Controls the Universe, The Comeback, Entourage, The Office for years, and now you're working on the Mindy Project. But I want to talk a little bit about your background to how you got to where you were as an editor first. And then from there, the crux of the conversation is really helping people understand what is life beyond editing, because I feel like so many people believe that, well, you get to the point where you assist for years and years and then you get your break and you become an editor and then you work until retirement and you're done. And there are so many other ways to go, and you're the perfect example of that. But before going down that road, let's just kind of start with a little bit of your background and kind of the origin story of how you got to Seinfeld and beyond.
Oh, I love origin stories. I'm also a big, comic book superhero fan. So I always loved the secret origin of Batman and Superman and Spider-Man and every superhero pretty much. But and actually that kind of ties in a little bit. Superman's origin ties in a little bit with mine. I was a kid and growing up in New Jersey, and I liked superheroes. And when I was 8 years old, I went and saw Superman the movie, and I loved it. I just was blown away by it. And for the first time in my life, though, I noticed, you'd watch cartoons and television shows and movies, but for the first time, I really was like, someone made this. Like, someone, and there was a team of people, and how did this come about? And so I started doing research and asking questions, and I found out, okay, there was a movie director. Like, that's a job, is being a director. And then, you find out about other aspects, editors and cinematographers and things like that. And I used to, read Starlog magazine and watching the making of Superman the movie, and then other, making of Star Wars, Raiders of the Lost Ark. And so I got really interested in the filmmaking process. So by the time I was about, around 14 years old, I started working with a man in my neighborhood who was a photographer who actually videotaped my bar mitzvah. And the theme of my bar mitzvah, by the way, of course, was Superman. But he started breaking into videotaping bar mitzvahs and weddings. And he's like, oh, you're interested in this kind of stuff, but, I need someone to work with me. And I was like, great. So I was like his assistant. And pretty quickly I started, doing all the video work. He was concentrating on photography, and I was the one who would shoot in the videos. And so we would shoot on VHS. Eventually we moved up to Super VHS. On my downtime, he would lend me his equipment. So I started videotaping and making my own little movies. And the first movie I made was Superman in Marlboro. That's my hometown, Marlboro, New Jersey. So I made Superman in Marlboro. And my father was an editor. And he worked in television. He worked. He did All My Children. He did soap operas. He did One Life to Live. He also did sports. He did Monday Night Football. He would go to the Olympics, World News Tonight. And I didn't know what he did. I didn't know what he did as an editor. I would go in and visit him sometimes, and I still didn't know what he did because the way the technology was. I never sat in on an editing session, and it was back then it was, you use like a CMX 3600, it was like a keyboard. You were just typing in time codes and things like that, and it would control decks. But I never knew what he did until I went in with Superman in Marlboro, and we transferred my VHS tapes to 1-inch video. And then we started putting it together, and I loved the process. And I had no idea that my father, that this was what he actually did. And so I learned this process, and I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed putting the show together, making this movie. So when I was done with that, filmed more things, and I was still working and videotaping weddings and bar mitzvahs. And then eventually I went off to Ithaca College, and I got my degree there in cinema and photography. I was a major of film production. We were shooting on film, so I got to finally, use real film cameras. And I met a community of people that were like-minded like me. These were guys who grew up loving, Star Wars, Superman, Raiders, Spielberg, Lucas. It was just great, meeting other people that would make, that love the same kinds of films as you and were interested and passionate about filmmaking. So there I would shoot films. And again, now we're shooting on actual film stock, which is different than shooting video. It's more expensive for one. But one of the things that I really loved was the editing process. And it was something that I excelled at, I think because I had some experience in the past working on my videos. But just, I loved that part of the process. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love directing and I loved, producing, but it's so stressful, on any level. And even on the student film level, you're responsible for everything. So, when you're shooting, is this person coming? Is this person late? Oh my God, are we going to get the equipment in time? You got 9 million things going on, and you really just want to focus on the art of filmmaking. And when you get to edit, I really felt like a lot of the pressure was gone, and it was just me and the footage putting it together and being creative. And so I graduated from Ithaca, like I said, with my degree. I moved out to Los Angeles soon after. And from there, I started just various jobs. I was a production assistant on low-budget videos, educational videos, music videos. I became a runner for a post house, a trailer house. And I spent a year there just, delivering things, running from, but I got to know the lay of the land and just running from studio to studio. What was interesting then was that the industry had changed a little bit in that the Avid had just come out not that long before. So even though I knew how to edit on film and video and I felt like, I have some chops, I didn't know how to use this equipment. And I should have taken a class, but I thought, I'll learn on the job. And I did, but it took a little bit longer than I would have hoped at the time. But I ended up, after a year, being a driver, I started dropping off reels on some of my runs and just contacting other post houses and just things. I say, look, I'm an assistant editor. Here's some student things that I cut, and here's some things that I've assisted on, professional things that I've assisted on. And next thing you know, someone had called and said, I'm doing something for the Oscars, a montage, 6 weeks. And that was it. I left. I worked for him for 6 weeks. That ended on a Friday. Monday, I was working at an ad agency, doing more assistant work. That would end. Other jobs would pop up. And then I ended up at a trailer house, doing movie trailers. I was doing sound. And eventually I started cutting low budget trailers, like B movies, even C movies. But it was really fun, and that's where I spent a year there on the Avid and really, really got to know it well. And it served me well because, like I said, I was there for about a year. And then at this point, a lot of my other friends from Ithaca College had come out, and they had gotten jobs in the industry. And a friend called and said, hey, the editor of Seinfeld is leaving, and she's taking her assistant with her. We have a new editor coming in. We need a new assistant editor. Are you interested? And I said, I'll be there today. It was 2 shows. Castle Rock had Seinfeld, and they had another show called The Single Guy, which starred Jonathan Silverman. And they needed the assistant editor did both shows. So Seinfeld was cutting on Avid, and The Single Guy was cutting on Lightworks, or Heavyworks, as they called it, which was the multicam version. And I said, yeah, I'll be there. So I had all my union paperwork ready to go. I had, kept track of all my pay stubs and my hours. I had things signed by producers. So I met with them. We clicked. And the next thing I know, I'm union and I'm working on Seinfeld and The Single Guy. And I would load in all the data. I lived at the Radford lot because, they both shows shot on different nights. I would load in footage. I would organize it. I would, spit out all the cuts. I would laugh the shows. You add extra laughs, especially when there's stuff that you shoot outside or you pre-shoot stuff where there's no audience. I would load in stock shots, assist on the mixes and the onlines. And it was great. I had such a great group of people. I just loved working with Jerry, my editor Skip Collector on Seinfeld. Noel Rogers was the editor that I worked with on The Single Guy, and he was fantastic. And they taught me so much in cutting comedy. And so I was doing that, and then towards the end of the second year, the clip show came up. And so the plan was, hey, Dave, you'll work with a writer on the clip show, spend some time with that. And then originally Skip was going to get it ready for broadcast. I said, great. And so I spent, it was about 6-7 weeks working with Darren Henry, who was a writer. He was a writer's assistant turned writer, and no one knew the show better than him. And we just worked, and every day we would try new things. It was quite the process going through all this footage and, just showing fun stuff, but also getting to edit fun clips and montages. And I got to bring in Superman music. I said, oh, let's do this, because Jerry was such a big Superman fan. They had used Superman music, the John Williams theme from Superman the movie in one of the episodes. And I thought, oh, this will be a great way to showcase, the high production values of the show, like doing a montage of that. And I was able to, get that music in, and I knew it pretty well. So I was able to edit it so that things hit in really good places. And Jerry came in, and at first he was like, oh, the Superman theme, are there enough transitions and changes? And I was like, yeah, just watch it. And he loved it. And, I had to really prove myself with him too, because he came in and we were very friendly. We both loved Superman, but this show is his baby, and he doesn't know what I can do as an editor. He knows what I do. I facilitate the editor as an assistant, but it was great that he gave me a chance to prove myself and that he was happy with the results. And so it was really just a great experience. I got to work with him, Larry David, Jeff Schaefer and Alec Berg, Andy Ackerman. And by the end, Skip Collector said, Dave, you're doing a great job. I'm so slammed editing the Puerto Rican Day parade and the finale. So this one's all yours. You polish it. You get it ready for broadcast. And we had worked on some of the things we had done for our rap party reel. And we kind of just given Skip some clips. I had cut some things. He had tweaked some things. And then, especially like with an end montage of just being, sentimental. But it wasn't until we got it into the clip show and really got to shape it and add the Green Day song, which we had gone through a bunch of songs. And the Green Day song, we didn't have that on the rap party reel. And so once we got to really, lay that in and tweak the cut, that last montage, like you said, you cry, Seinfeld is over, really pulling footage from all the behind the scenes stuff that really hit and just was really, really a great, I think, send off and just a really nice, as Jerry called it, such a great walk down memory lane.
Well, and one of the reasons that it's so quintessential to me specifically, other than the fact that Seinfeld is, in my opinion, the funniest and best sitcom ever created in the history of television. But that clip show came out the year that I graduated high school, and my high school graduation song was that Green Day song. So it was like converging with all these emotions where like I was losing my adolescence and I was moving from my home and I'm losing Seinfeld. And so it's like just one of those moments in history that really, really stuck with me. So I know that there are a lot of other people, regardless of whatever time it may have hit them, that it's a very kind of quintessential moment in the show and just also in television history as well. And it's a really, really well put together show. And it's so funny that you say that it was kind of, a quasi rap party reel, because that's kind of what it feels like too, in the best way possible, where, as you know, in TV, a lot of times all the best material is on the wrap party reel, and then they ask for like a clips reel or something for the DVD, and you're like, well, we can't really use that one because it's not really safe for the public, but it kind of had that feel. So I love that that's part of the story.
Yeah, I mean, we pulled some bloopers that made it into the clip show. The gag reel for people, at the wrap party, you show kind of highlights and the bloopers. But we would, because this was the final year of the show, we did get a little sentimental. So I was pulling stuff, behind the scenes stuff, pictures and things like that. And so we were working on it for the wrap reel. And then really, though, I think we added the music. We found that song and said, oh, this is great. It is sentimental, but also there's a certain, just even the title, it's like good riddance. It just had a nice, it wasn't too mushy, but it just had a real nice feel to it. And then the images, getting to just pick these images and work with it, just really, really ended the episode, the clip show, really nicely.
Yeah, I could not agree more. And I want to transition to life after Seinfeld and kind of where your career went. That's going to be a big part of the show. But before we do that, I want to stop down real quick, because I always like to kind of deconstruct somebody's journey, because a lot of times when somebody is at a panel, like, for example, I first met you at the Edit Fest panel a little bit earlier this year. And a lot of times when younger people go to these panels, they hear people's stories and they're like, oh, that's great, but that's never going to happen to me. I'm never going to meet that guy, or I'm never going to be in that one place. And I always try to deconstruct somebody's story to the foundation so they can say, oh, well, that I can do. And one of the things that I always say, there's really 2 points that I make, and I've made this in past episodes. I did like a full 2-hour session about how to kind of break in and shape your career, and I'll put links to episodes 56 and 57. But it really comes down to 2 main things, in my opinion. Number one, you have to be really good at your craft and focus on the process and understand storytelling. But number 2, people need to know who you are. And if you have one or the other, it doesn't work. If everybody knows you and your work sucks, you're not going to get work. If you're amazing and you are the best editor in the history of mankind and you do it in a dark room, independent of any other human beings, you're never going to get any work. And you really kind of embody that, where you did both of those things.
It's interesting you put it that way. I guess for me, it was always just about, working hard, being good at the craft. I mean, there's no doubt about it. And just, keeping up relationships with people. I mean, and that's part of working hard, is that they know they can count on you. Even when I worked as a runner at a trailer house, they would work me harder than the other runners because they knew they could count on me. Like, I was the guy who, all right, Dave will get it done. That's just my work ethic. I mean, I moved out here. I didn't have a job lined up. Like I said, I ended up as a PA for a place, like on a low budget video, and just would segue, you'd network and you just cold call. And for me, yes, you hit it right on the head. Those 2 things are exactly it. And I think part of the people knowing who you are, that's part of working hard. And I think also being a good person, because they can know who you are. And if they don't like you, you can be the best editor and they'll still be like, I don't know if I want to hire this guy. So, I always say, like, you have to have a great attitude and love what you do, and, really kind of enjoy the work, but also be pleasant in the edit bay, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Nobody wants to deal with a grumpy editor, right?
There are some out there. There are definitely some out there, and they've worked, but I think less and less nowadays, because producers, they get tired of it. They don't want to hear someone saying, no, can't do that, or cuts only, I don't do these, So
well, and it's a buyer's market too. I mean, there are just so many people that are trying to find editing work that also have the skills, because technology has democratized the ability to have access to learning how to do these things. Whereas 30 years ago, just being able to learn how to do it was almost impossible. Now anybody can.
And I talk about that also. Like, it's amazing now. Avid was incredible, and when Final Cut Pro came out, and you could do that on your laptop. It was like, oh my God, you can do professional level things on your laptop. I grew up, editing VHS tapes, and I was thrilled once they got flying erase heads, so I didn't have those chroma lines in between every edit.
Oh yeah,
if you remember.
No, I started VHS to VHS as well. That was my first 5 years of learning how to cut, was 2 VHS decks in my basement. So I was there. Well, before we move forwards, the one last question that I like to ask is we've heard kind of all the connections and all the, oh, I got this job and this job and this job. But was there a period somewhere in there where you weren't successful and you were thinking, oh my God, am I ever going to find work? Like I can't pay the bills. Like I had this long string of unemployment. Because so seldom do you actually hear that part of an origin story. And I love to hear that part because then other people think, oh, wait, he went through a bunch of crap too before he hit it. Like I had a period of almost 5 years where that happened to me. So do you have kind of that unspoken section of the origin story that might not be all the connections and everything working out perfectly?
Not really. I mean, I got.
Well, then I'm just going to have to stop the show now. Come on.
Well, I mean, look, like I said, when I first got out here, it's like I came out here. I came out here with two friends. One became an editor. Another one became an executive on networks, on television networks. But I crashed, like another guy from high school, we crashed on his floor the first night we were here. Craig Mazin, who's a writer, very successful writer, did The Hangover 2, 3, Identity Thief, and he was starting out. He was working at an ad agency at the time doing trailer copy and things like that. And so we crashed on his floor, and my mom knew a guy who knew a woman or someone. It was like just. I made a call, hey, I'm looking for PA work, and that was it. I got PA work. And the PA work was great, but it was stressful when, the gig would end. You were hustling to try to find your next job. And then that's why I eventually became a runner at a post house. I was like, look, I want to get into post, and I can't, the stress when you're not working, especially when you don't have a ton of money in the bank, it's tough. That's really tough. So I was also working, after that, when I first started out, trying to be an assistant editor, I think that there were periods. I mean, I know at one point I was out here. I think it was while I was a runner, or maybe even before I was a runner. I worked at an Italian restaurant. I was a host at Viva La Pasta for a short period of time, and I also Fridays when I was a runner at this trailer house. On Fridays, I would intern at Silver Pictures, and it was just a free internship. But I loved Die Hard. I loved the Lethal Weapon movies. Loved Xanadu, which was all under Joel Silver. So I would go there and I would just photocopy the scripts for the weekend read, whatever stuff they needed, get coffees, whatever. Once I left being a trailer, runner and assistant editing. Apprentice editing, assistant editing, I stayed pretty consistent working. And if there were periods where I didn't have some work, if there was a month where I was down, I was usually doing freebies. I was editing someone's reel. I started putting ads in like backstage. So I would edit people's reels. I would just be, doing whatever I could to work. I did plenty of freebies where I edited a low budget feature for someone, and we would edit late at night because then I did start working again. And so I would work during the day. I would sleep for a few hours, and then I would pick up the director at midnight, and we would edit till 6 a.m. But I personally did not have long periods of time where I wasn't working. And once I got on, once Seinfeld ended, I mean, that's the story. That's really the beginning of the story for me, because as an editor, because once that ended, so we went to a show called Newsradio, which was a great show. Skip Collector had done the syndication cuts for the show the summer before. That's when we would take out like 30 seconds to a minute of every episode, so they would run in syndication. And I would load all the things in. Again, as an assistant editor, I would get the stuff into the system and get it out and whatever else you needed. I got to watch all these episodes, and I was like, oh my God, this show is incredible. And when Jerry announced that we weren't going to come back, I said to Skip, I said, is there any chance we can get Newsradio? And he's like, nah, they have an editor. They're all set. But they wanted to make a change, and they contacted Skip, and so we went to Newsradio. And at that point, Skip knew that I could sit in the chair, so he could go off and direct. He could edit a pilot, and I edited a bunch of episodes that season. I would assist myself. So I was the assistant editor. I would load the stuff in, cut it, and spit it out. I met great people there. Great, just another great crew. Other people from Seinfeld came over. And then after that, I was working on other shows. I was assisting and cutting. And then I said, I got to stop assisting. Like basically you have to make that decision. Like when you have a decent amount of credits under your belt, you have to say, all right, I have to let people know I'm around to edit. And even if it's just getting on more shows as like a fill-in guy, it's hard sometimes to say, no, I'm going to turn down work, but that's what I did. And luckily, Andy Richter Controls the Universe, I had assisted on the pilot. It went to series. And between Skip and Andy Ackerman, who was an executive producer, they had enough faith in me to be the second editor. And Andy Ackerman, by the way, who, he directed half of the Seinfelds, he came from editing. He worked on Cheers. He worked on WKRP in Cincinnati. He started, I think, as an assistant editor on Welcome Back, Kotter. He worked on Wings as a director. So, he's someone who came from editing. So I also saw like, okay, I can eventually get there if I work hard enough. I did Andy Richter Controls the Universe, and that was great. It was single camera, so it was different than multi-camera. And I thought the stuff was just so funny. I mean, Victor Fresco was the other executive producer, writer. And again, it was just a great crew, great cast. And from there, that ended. I did a few other shows. One was called The O'Keeffes. Mark O'Keefe was a writer on Newsradio. His brother, Danny O'Keefe, was a writer on Seinfeld. And just as a little tidbit of information, they were homeschooled. The O'Keeffes was based on Mark's real life. They were homeschooled, and their family celebrated Festivus. That's where it came from, was their actual, the Seinfeld holiday of Festivus for the rest of us came from their actual family.
All right, well, learning that has just become the absolute highlight of my entire month. Like, just knowing the actual real origin of Festivus just capped it all off. If I learned nothing from this show except that, totally worth it. That's amazing. So I know we're kind of transitioning into where you're going. I want to really get into The Office and your transition there, but I kind of want to close the loop on this idea of kind of the struggles that you went through. And I think it's really, really funny that you're like, it all worked out great. But you're saying, well, I slept on a guy's floor and I was a hostess at an Italian restaurant and I ran around set as a PA and I was cutting shorts and features for free. Like, I love hearing all that because nowadays people think you shouldn't have to do all that to become an editor. My sincerest apologies for the interruption in the middle of this interview. But if you are a content creator or you work in the entertainment industry, not only is the following promo not an interruption, but listening has the potential to change your life. Because collaborating with Evercast is that powerful. Here's a brief excerpt from a recent interview that I did with Evercast co-founders Brad Thomas and award-winning editor Roger Barton.
Living this lifestyle of a feature film editor has really had an impact on me. So I was really looking for something to push back against all of these lifestyle infringements that are imposed on us, both by schedules and expectations. When you guys demoed Evercast for me that first time, my jaw hit the floor. I'm like, oh my God, this is what I have been waiting for a decade.
I also had the same reaction when I first saw Evercast. 2 words came to mind: game changer.
Our goal, honestly, is to become the Zoom for creatives, whatever it is you're streaming, whether it's editorial, visual effects, Pro Tools for music composition, live shot cameras. It's consistent audio and video, lip sync always stays in sync. Whether you're in a live session where you're getting that feedback immediately, or you can't get it immediately, so you record the session and you can share those clips with people on the production team where there's no room for any confusion. It's like, this is exactly what the director wants. This is exactly what the producer wants.
What matters most to me is it makes the entire process more efficient, which then translates to us as creatives who spend way too much time in front of computers. We get to shut it down and we get to go spend time with our friends and family.
The biggest complaint, and I'm sure you guys have heard this many, many times, this looks amazing, I just can't afford it.
Tesla had to release the Model S before they released the Model 3. So by the end of the year, we are going to be releasing a sub $200 version a month of Evercast for the freelancer and indie creatives. Anyone who is a professional video creator outside of Hollywood.
I think what we've learned over the last few months is that this technology can translate to better lives for all of us that give us more flexibility and control while still maintaining the creativity, the creative momentum, and the quality of work.
I cannot stress this enough. Evercast is changing the way that we collaborate. If you value your craft, your well-being, and spending quality time with the ones you love, Evercast now makes that possible for you and me. To listen to the full interview and learn about the amazing potential that Evercast has to change the way that you work and live, visit optimizeyourself.me/Evercast. Now back to today's interview.
Well, yeah, listen, I always say, I paid my dues. I didn't have long periods of unemployment when I was an assistant editor or editor. Like that's all that I was saying. When I first came out here, I was PA. I did not know how to use the Avid. It's weird. You come from directing and editing your own things to next thing you know, you're scraping up a fake floor that they laid down on a soundstage because you're striking a set, and you're like, how did this become my life? But I picked up cigarette butts in a parking lot that the crew left when we were shooting on location. So I definitely, paid my bills. And like I said, I had periods of unemployment then. It's definitely a struggle. And yeah, so I was a host at an Italian restaurant. I knew a bunch of people there. My roommate was a waiter. A bunch of other people, that I'm still friendly with worked at this restaurant. And you have to pay your dues. Even as a PA, I would just, you just hustle and you just got to have that good attitude. And one thing that they told me that makes so much sense, but I feel like some PAs don't know it. It's like, write everything down. So when they tell you, hey, I need you to get this, this, and this, don't try to just remember it in your head. Write it down, because you will forget one of those things. And when you come back and you don't have one of those things, you're like, I'm so sorry, but that doesn't cut it. Like, you need to not make mistakes, or make as few mistakes and make them tiny, if any. But yes, I came out here with nothing. I crashed I had a car. I think I had a few $1,000s. I crashed on a friend's floor. The next morning, I saw a for rent sign across the street, and I ended up living there for 13 years. So that was how things for me started out.
Yeah, and I think it's just really important for especially younger people to hear that, because if somebody listening right now is saying, I really want to be the editor of the next great American sitcom, but right now I'm at Starbucks, and they're thinking, I have failed. It's like, no, you haven't failed. That's just the learning process. And there's this great acronym that I learned recently. It's called FAIL, which is your first attempt in learning. This is just part of the learning process. Failure is just the steps that you take towards success. So I really try to encourage people to think, oh my God, I'm picking up cigarette butts at 2:00 in the morning on a set, and I really want to be cutting. That's can be part of the process and move you forward. So I really try to encourage people and not have them feel so discouraged if they are in that position right now. So,
well, I just want to say, one thing also was when I worked at this trailer house, like, because people liked me, because I worked hard, they in turn, the editors would say, yeah, let's go over the Avid. Like, they would take time and teach me things. So it just benefit myself also to just, be myself, work hard. But you in turn, if you do work hard, you will make progress. So I learned the Avid. I went through the basic tutorial, and at least I had enough knowledge from there to get my next gig and learn more. And like I said, when I worked at this one trailer house, finally as a sound editor and then an editor, I spent a year really, really getting to learn the equipment, and that served me. By the time I got to Seinfeld, I knew it frontwards and backwards. The only thing I didn't know was multicam, and I spent an hour at Avid, and they say, yeah, this is what you do. And I had other assistant editors that would show me, and they would give me tech support, and I've returned the favor. I've had people who've called me, hey, how do I do this? How do I add a resize on this layer, but I don't want it to affect the layer underneath, things like that. I'm like, all right, you got an option. Copy it, put it on here, So I think everybody, helps everybody. And when we get into the office, I'll tell you, again, it was networking and people that I had worked with from the past who had come back to say, hey, we want to work with Dave again.
Yeah, and that's exactly where I want to go now. Is the first half of the show is really all about your origin story, what you went through to become an editor and work on these giant quintessential American comedies. But now I'm really intrigued as to how you went from the next level, which is editing these shows, to transitioning to both directing and executive producing, because a lot of people feel like once they get into editing, once they are the editor first chair on a show, that's kind of it. But there are a lot of other opportunities. So let's kind of talk about the transition into that part of your career.
I was actually editing, like I said, I'd edited a bunch of shows, the O'Keeffes. I did another show called The Mullets for UPN. And then I got a call from Morgan Sackett, who had originally hired me, one of the guys who had hired me on Seinfeld and The Single Guy. He was a guy who started as a PA on Seinfeld has become a successful executive producer, working on Parks and Recreation, Veep, numerous things. But Morgan at the time had called me and said, hey, we're going to put Seinfeld out on DVD. I want you to cut all the extras. I said, great. So we worked, doing the Seinfeld DVDs, making a documentary, making inside looks on everything. And I was very content. Darren Henry, who I had worked with, had come back to help shape these. So we were doing, brand new interviews, just shot a ton of stuff and, putting this all together. And then producer Ken Sabornak from Newsradio called and said, hey, I got a show I want you to take a look at. I think you'd be a great fit with the executive producer. So it was a pilot called The Office. And I watched the pilot and I said, I'm going to go do this show. And I met with Greg Daniels. And we just hit it off. We talked about Star Trek and Battlestar Galactica. I said, Dwight, I watched the pilot. I said, Dwight, Star Trek is too cool for Dwight. Like, he should have such a niche thing that he likes Battlestar Galactica, the original Battlestar Galactica. This was before the new show had come out and become a hit. And we just got along great. And so that was it. I came on board. I edited the first season of The Office. We did 6 episodes. So the pilot was cut. I think I tweaked it very slightly just to get it for broadcast. And the first episode I cut and showed up on the first day of shooting was Diversity Day. Ken Kwapis was directing. And we were just a little show. And so we did the first season. We did 6 episodes. We came back. We got picked up for another 6 episodes. And we just started to find our groove. So then we got picked up for another 7. We were 13 episodes. So we brought in a second editor because I was cutting, especially the second season. I had cut the first 6 by myself, and I was like, if we do more, we need to get a second editor in here. So Dean Holland came on board and joined us, and then we ended up getting picked up for the whole season. And then next thing you know, Dean and I got nominated for episodes that we had cut, and the show won the Emmy for Best Comedy, Outstanding Comedy. And so that was really exciting for season 2. And we had gotten picked up for more episodes. And then, in the season 3, we decided instead of us cutting separate episodes and submitting those for the Emmys, we had each cut to get together. We cut the finale, and we got nominated for an Emmy, and we won. And that was really exciting. Rainn Wilson got to present. And, he yelled out our names, and that was really exciting that we got to, win the Emmy. But I said something even on stage. I remember something to the degree of this is really nice, but the work is the real reward, because I love doing the show. I mean, it was such a great group of people. And, in behind the scenes, in front of the camera, behind the camera, just, we really were like a family. And Greg Daniels was just so smart and so generous. And everybody's just really great to work with these people. Steve Carell, oh my God. I mean, just amazing people. So I had told Greg, I started planting the seed very early on, hey, I want to direct. And I had showed him some of my student work, and he said, yeah, I think you'd be great at it. So that was always there. And at the end of each season, I would say, Greg, I want to direct. He's like, okay. Finally, at the end of season 3, I said, Greg, I really want to direct. Because we had some directors that had come in, and I felt like we had done a lot of cleanup in post to make episodes look good. I'm not trying to. I know how tough directing is now, so I don't think that these were terrible directors or anything like that. But I felt like our show, it was kind of that style at the time of the mockumentary style was new. And, this kind of, as we called it, this tofu hot dog, because it is scripted, but you want to make it look like we're just capturing stuff. So some things were tricky and to, make it funny. But I said, Greg, I really want to direct. And so he's like, okay. And so he sent an email that summer to the cast saying, hey, this is what we've got going on. This is who's coming on to direct. And we have people from the family stepping up. And he had named me in this email. And I was so excited. And so I was going to get an episode in season 4. And I was nervous and anxious. And then the writer's strike hit. And I was like, oh, no. But and then we were out of work for 3 months. And then once we got back, the line producer said to me, hey, I don't know exactly what promises were made. And I said, listen, we all just want to get back to work. I'll get an episode in season 5. It's fine. And then sure enough, season 5 came and I got my first episode to direct. And it was employee transfer. I think it was the 6th episode. It's Michael breaks up with Holly, and there was a lot going on in this episode, actually. So it was Michael, Daryl, and Holly drive to New Hampshire or Vermont to break up. She's moving, she's going there. He wasn't planning on breaking up with her, but he realizes like that they're just going to be too far away. It's not going to work. And so I had a lot of comedy, but also a lot of emotional stuff. And a lot of it took place in a truck, and it was like 112 degrees when we were shooting this. And the other storylines that I had in that episode was Jim and Pam go to lunch, and we meet Jim's brothers for the first time. And Pam wants to pull a prank on Jim, and it kind of backfires on her. And then the third story was that Dwight decides to come in dressed all in Cornell gear, and he's going to apply to Cornell, which just infuriates Andy, who's dating Angela, who Dwight still loves. And so, just had a lot of fun with that storyline, but it was intense. I mean, you jump into the deep end of the pool or the lake, however, and it's dark. I mean, like there's nothing like it. But again, it's like anything, there's always a first time. So I did it. I got to edit my own episode. It turned out well. And from there, I got to direct more episodes. And Greg also had such a trust with me in editing that I would oversee. Dean had left to go to Parks and Rec with Mike Schur. So we had brought in new editors. Claire Scanlon joined us. And Stu Bass had come in for a little while. He had helped out in season 1. So he came back for a little while. And from there, Claire and I, we kind of finished the series, but we would help each other, and I kind of oversaw post, and I became an associate producer and eventually a producer, and by the end I was a co-executive producer on the show, and I had directed I think 9 episodes, including the penultimate one, Arm, which aired right before the series finale. So it was really just a great, rewarding experience, and it came from a sense of trust and friendship. I really believe Greg Daniels, we had a great friendship, and he trusted me. And he would, eventually there were times where he was like, listen, I'm slammed with this, you do the network cut. So I would work with other editors and get their cuts into shape for the network cut, because I knew what his sensibilities were. And he knew early on, like, Dave gets what's funny. He doesn't mince. He's nice, but he doesn't mince words. If I don't like something, if I think something's boring, I would tell him. I just was honest, but in a kind way. So, we had a nice shorthand together, and also we just shared a lot of the same sensibilities when it came to the show. We were a great team, and I got to just do more than just edit on the show. By the end, I mean, I was still editing. I loved editing, but getting to direct, getting to fill in stuff. If we needed something reshot, a talking head, often I was the guy who would just go to set to get it because I knew what we needed. And I would work with the other editors. Claire was fantastic. We had great assistant editors doing stuff, and they would get to cut. I was, a firm believer in giving people opportunities to cut scenes, to help them with their scenes, get them better, and to get them up and cutting. And that's how it is now. One of my assistant editors, Rob Burnett, is now a full. He cut multiple episodes on The Office by the end, and he's an editor with me now on the Mindy Project. Another editor, Curtis is on Fargo right now, and he was just nominated for an Emmy. So these are guys who have, got opportunities to cut on the show, and from there they got confidence and more skills, and they went on to edit themselves, just like I was mentored when I started out.
Yeah, and the couple of keys that I want to pull out of this section of the story, the first one kind of going back a little bit, which I think is so absolutely crucial to wherever you want to transition to next, is you just decided one day that I'm not an assistant anymore. And that's scary, but I need to start turning down assistant work and make the world very clear that I am an editor now. That is terrifying for some people to think, but I just want to keep getting the work. And if I say no, they're not going to like me. They're not going to call me back. But you have to put that out into the world, and you have to re-identify yourself. And I love that you did that. And then the second thing that I want to pull out of this that I think is so important is that you were doing an amazing job as an editor, but you just kept poking and prodding and saying, hey guys, I want to direct. Hey guys, guys, I want to direct. Hey guys, over here, remember me? I want to direct. And you're not doing it in an annoying way, but at the same time, you're making it very clear. This is what I want to put out there next, and this is where I want to go. And that, along with patience, is what got you to where you are.
Yes, I felt like, especially at the time with directing, I had, like I said, I had directed my own shorts. I had stuff from college. So Greg saw what I could do, and I would help him. He was just starting out as a director on season 1. He'd never directed anything before. So he said, I want you on set with me to help with continuity and just if I'm missing something. And I even designed a few shots on the basketball episode. I said, let's do this, have the camera here and do this. And, and a lot of times he was back by the monitors, and he's like, you call cut when you think we've got it. So it was a great experience for me to be on set. And what was really nice also, I should say, is that our edit bays were right near the set. You know the crew, you know the cast because you're there. It's different, I think, if you're editing a show that's shooting farther away or all on location, where you only meet the crew and the cast at the wrap party. It's different when you're part of the same in the same space and you see everybody and you're there at the table reads and they know you and they know to trust you. Like, they appreciated what we did as editors because they knew we didn't let them down. We would find their best stuff. We would build it, whatever creative things we needed to do to make everybody look good and to keep their best performances in. That's what we would do. So, like, even Greg had asked me, he's like, what have you done to get their trust? And I was like, they see what I do in the edit bay. They see that I know what their best stuff is, and that's what I want to go and get on the set. And he was like, okay. I mean, that was it. I got a really nice... when I directed Arm, which was the penultimate episode, we finished the last day of shooting. I shot emotional stuff with Jenna Fisher and John Krasinski. John rapped, and we had a couple more shots with Jenna. And about a half hour later, I got a really nice email from John, just thanking me for everything that I had done on the show. And he was so happy that I got to direct this episode. He's like, and he just said, like, you're the most vital of souls to the show. Thank you. And it was just so touching and sweet. And I think the cast knew, like, I adored them. I mean, I loved this cast, loved them. And I love their characters. I used to call people by their characters, especially the writers like Mindy and BJ. I would call them Kelly and Ryan, or Temp or Fire Guy. And Paul, Toby, I would call him Toblerone. I had nicknames for everybody. Tobias. Like, I loved that. Calling people by their character names. I was just really, really just loved the world of the show. But it was just so nice. Like, John just being appreciated and being recognized for what I contributed to the show as an editor and as a director was just really, really touching. And I just cherish that.
Well, I could easily do an entire part 2 of this episode just talking about The Office, because I'm a gigantic geek of The Office. Absolutely love it.
If you want to do it, I'll come back. You say the word, man.
I certainly could. It doesn't quite fit into the mold of the show that I have, but I could certainly do that. But now what I want to geek out on for the last little bit that I have you, because I want to be respectful of your time, is I want to understand the process. And this is really just me being selfish and having you on just for me. If the audience gets something out of this, great.
By the way, I'm a huge fan. I mean, some of your credits, Burn Notice is a show that I'm like, oh my God, look how stylistic this is. It's so good. And we both know Matt Nix, another brilliant writer producer. I was watching the show because I knew him, and I was like, oh, Matt's got a new show, and I was just blown away. I mean, season 1, what you guys did, but all right, that's a whole other conversation. But again, I'm so impressed with the work you were doing, even just like, oh, let's speed up stock shots, let's slow them down, let's go bright, let's do this. And I just loved what you did, and stylistically, just the pacing of that show and the action that you got. Each episode was like a feature film.
Well, cool. I appreciate that, and we'll throw the credit to Casey and Steve as well, because obviously we were an editorial team, so I don't want anybody listening thinking that I did it all, because I certainly didn't. But I was a part of it, and that was kind of one of those quintessential shows in my career that no matter what I do, I'm always going to look back fondly on the 4 years at Burn Notice, and just kind of it's like working with a family. It's kind of like the world that you had. But where I really want to pick your brain now is understanding how to time manage your day if you are both editing, directing, and executive producing other shows, because I'm kind of in that transitional period right now where you had said, I am done assisting, I want to be an editor, and I'm now starting to put myself out into the world saying, I want to be a part of the producing team, overseeing things, and not just editing anymore. But I'm still trying to figure out, how do you time manage your day, even if you're not directing, just how you're managing all the episodes at once and cutting. But I can't even begin to understand how you're directing and cutting the same episode. And like, my dream is getting Louis C.K. to answer the same question someday, but I don't understand how you do that on a TV broadcast schedule.
Well, I mean, I'll tell you, like, this kind of goes back to even when you said, making the jump from assistant to editor. It's about taking risks. Like, not married, don't have kids. So I was able to say no to jobs because I was just supporting myself. Like, I didn't feel like, oh my God, I'm supporting a whole family. I can't turn down work. You can, but it is hard. Like, there are sacrifices that you can make and things like that. But of course, it's not easy. The same thing with this. It's like to say, hey, I want to edit. I want to, I can do more. I can produce other editors and I can direct. It's just, it does take a lot of time. But my boss right now is a perfect example. Mindy Kaling, I work on the Mindy Project. Mindy is a writer. She's the showrunner. She is in post. She's an actress. She does amazing publicity. And so she wears all these hats, and yet she makes the time to do it. She doesn't have a lot of free time, to do other things, especially when we're in production. Even Jerry Seinfeld, he was running the show the last 2 years. He would call the production, he would say, like, it's a submarine, like we're going under for, 7 months, 8 months. Maybe you pop up for Christmas break and then you go back down again. But for me, it's just like, I'm always, my cell is always on. Like, if people need to text me or get in touch with me, I'm available. The show, my work is my priority. I go into work, I edit, I come home, a lot of times I'll edit. I can bring stuff at home and work. So I'll edit at night. I'll edit early in the morning. Sometimes my sleep schedule is such that I'll nap in the afternoon for an hour, and then I'm good to go. Come 5 a.m., I wake up and I'll edit from 5 to 8, and then take another nap, from 8 to 10. And then I get up, edit some more, go to work. So, the hours are there, and I'll work weekends if I need to. I don't mind. Especially like when you work on shows that you love, it makes it easier. When the quality is there, I mean, it totally, makes it easier. Like, I get an idea. I'm like, oh, I can't wait to try this out. Even today, I have to cut down a show that I directed and edited, and I'm excited to think about, okay, I got to take, 2 minutes out. What, just coming up with ideas in my head. Like, oh, I can't wait to look at it. I'll do this, and maybe I'll try that. So there's definitely a passion with it. That I wouldn't say it's like an obsession, but it's definitely, I do enjoy the work. It is a reward getting to work on these kind of things and being creative and editing, all aspects, editing, directing, and producing other editors are so much fun. We had an episode where Mindy said, hey, can you take a look at the other editors' work? She goes, I think the show is good, but it's not quite there yet to send to the network. And I said, yeah, I'd love to. Like, that's what I want to do as a producer. The main reason why I came to Mindy's show was because I watched season 1 when I was still on The Office. I loved it. And number 2, I was like, I'll make your life easier. Like, she just was working so much and being so heavily having to come to post, where it was like, I knew her sensibilities. I said, I'll get in there. Rob will come with me. We'll make your life easier. And we have. Like, we've just, a lot of the communication, she could just give us notes. She'll come in when she needs to, but it's just a lot faster. It's a lot smoother for her. So when I work on things, though, and I am, like I said, I'm editing a show that I directed. When I go into direct, it's like I got to make sure whatever I'm cutting is taken care of before. So I just work. They try to schedule me as a director to not impede on post too much. So I take care of whatever this also because I'm like a staff person, they can move me around. I ended up directing we started shooting the end of July. I directed the second episode. It was spread out over a few weeks because of cross-boarding actor availability. And no one cuts it until whereas on a regular show with a regular editor, you start, the director directs and the next day footage comes in. Mine basically just sits there. My assistant organizes it and I jump on it as soon as I'm done directing. And so it takes me, I'm a little behind, but you're also getting the editor's assembly and the director's cut all in one. So that speeds things up. And because I directed, I know the footage so well, my cuts tend to turn out pretty well, in really good shape. And, then Mindy puts, she gets involved and gives me her notes and her thoughts. And a lot of times the process is super smooth, going to the network, getting their notes, and, next thing you know, we're locking and on the air.
You pretty much answered my final question, which was I was trying to understand just from the day-to-day perspective as an editor, you're getting the footage that they shot the day before, or even sometimes that morning. If they're, breaking at lunch, getting the footage, transferring it, you're getting it that evening. So I'm thinking, well, what in the world is happening with yours? And you answer that, which is that it basically just sits. So that was that. So basically what they've done is they've just extended the delivery schedule a little bit for an episode by a day to 3, just knowing that your footage is going to sit.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes my assistant will cut some scenes for me, or another editor will jump on stuff, but generally I end up recutting, or I just like to cut my stuff. So I'm fast enough that when it is finished, when we are finished shooting and I have all the dailies like that, I can just jump in and cruise through it. And again, some scenes, even when you're directing, they're tough. They're tough to put together, and I have to fix my own mistakes. Like, I can't believe I missed that shot. And what creative thing can I come up with to fix it? But yeah, I mean, it's like you see your schedule. Okay. I mean, they rarely put me in a situation where, okay, you need to finish shooting this and it's going to go to air the week after. But if it does happen, there will be, like, if I do have to have another editor cutting it, and then I'll come in and just do my director's cut and recut, what I need to make myself happy, then I'll do that. But generally there's enough time where I won't start editing it really until I'm finished directing. Okay, well, that definitely answers that question for me. So I want to be very, very respectful of your time, and I want to let you go and just thank you for just shedding tons and tons of amazing knowledge for both me and my audience. But I just wanted to see if I can get like one last super, super quick answer, and that is, if somebody comes up to you, and I'm sure they've done this many, many times, and they just say, what's the one little piece of advice, the first action step that I can take if I want to break in and I want to build a career that you have? What's your answer that you would give them? I mean, there's no easy answer, but I tell people, like, it's kind of like what you said. You have to work hard, get your craft down. You need to practice, and then you just need to be persistent. You need to get out there. You need to cold call. You need to network with anybody that you know. You need to get in someplace. So even if you're a post PA, like I said, I mean, I did PA work. I was a runner. Get in someplace as a post PA. Because if you're a post PA and, we need something, hey, can you look for stock shots? Can you do this? Can you, the opportunities are there. And especially, like, I've had plenty of post PAs that have gone on to edit because I see what they can do and we give them opportunities, and they start shooting stuff for the gag reel, and then they start, they'll go elsewhere. We'll help set them up at least and say, hey, talk to this place. This is a non-union place. You'll get your hours to join the union, because if you join the union, we can hire you as an assistant editor here. I just tell people, work hard, be nice, and learn your craft. Become excellent at it. Could not have said any of it better. I very, very much appreciate your time. If I wanted to send my audience to be able to learn more about you, where can I send them to? They can go to davidevanrogers.com if they want to just see. I think my reel is up there, and I have some other press things and appearances, and I've done some Q&As for Office Tally and things like that. So there's some good information up there. davidevanrogers.com. Oh, this has been a tremendous pleasure. I thank you so much for your time. Thank you, Zach. This was really great, and I'm happy to come back. I had such a blast. Anytime you want to come back, talk about stuff, love to. Awesome. Well, I'm definitely going to take you up on that. All right. Take care. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Optimize Yourself podcast. To access the show notes for this and all previous episodes, as well as to subscribe so you don't miss future interviews just like this one, please visit optimizeyourself.me/podcast. And a special thanks to our sponsors Evercast and AeroDriven for making today's interview possible. To learn more about how to collaborate remotely without missing a frame and to get your real-time demo of Evercast in action, visit optimizeyourself.me/Evercast.
podcast. And to learn more about Ergo-Driven and my favorite product for standing workstations, the TopoMat, stick around. They're coming up next. If you are inspired by today's interview and you would like to up your networking game so you can get the attention of the right people who can help open the right doors that lead you to a more fulfilling and rewarding career path, but your outreach email game is a bit weak, well, then I invite you to download my Insider's Guide to Writing Great Outreach Emails. In this extensive and free, by the way, guide, I'm going to teach you why cold outreach is the most important soft skill that you must develop if you want to advance your career, which is important now more than ever that we are all stuck at home and cannot network in person. I will also show you the 5 most common mistakes that people make when writing their outreach messages, and I will bet that you've made at least one of these yourself in the past. And then finally, I'm going to break down step by step in a simple to follow checklist how you can structure an amazing outreach message that is going to provide value to your recipients, help you build a lasting relationship instead of feeling like, you're just bothering this person, and actually get a response to your outreach so you can then seek advice, connect with a potential mentor, set up lunch meetings, and possibly even land your next gig. If you would like to download this brand new guide for free, just visit optimizeyourself.me/email guide. And that's all one word, no dashes, /email guide. Thank you for listening. Stay safe, healthy, and sane, and be well. This episode was made possible for you by, you guessed it, Ergo-Driven, the creators of the TopoMat, my #1 recommended product if you are interested in moving more and not having sore feet at your height adjustable or standing workstation. Almost every new person that I meet in this industry starts our conversation with, "Hey, I got a TopoMat because of you. It's changed my life. Thank you." Listen, standing desks are only great if you're actually standing well. Otherwise, you are just fighting fatigue and chronic pain. Not like any other anti-fatigue mat, the Topo is scientifically proven to help you move more throughout your day, which helps reduce discomfort and also increases your focus and your productivity. I'm literally standing on one as I read this, and I don't go to a single job without it. And if you're smaller and concerned the Topo mat might be too big, or you simply don't have the floor space, well, there's a Topo Mini for that. To learn more, visit optimizeyourself.me/topo. That's TOPO.